There is an IT guy
Evening,
sitting
Councilor
right
Bogart.
there.
There's a couple of other items in your box.
Oh.
Also doing a plans committee.
Before we leave, would you dig them up for me?
Councilor Bogart, can you hear us?
I've got my keys with me.
Yes, I can hear you. Okay, thanks. We're still waiting for the meeting to come to order.
Today's the 12th.
I'll get it right now.
Typically they do, yes.
Thank you. Do you remember Tammy Fondy? Her husband is applying for the planning board, but he couldn't make it to this meeting.
Okay.
Just so you're
Yeah,
aware.
because the one I'm concerned about is right there, as you know.
Yep.
Okay, and the other one I'm wondering about, a question about was this one. Is that the guy that we put on the board who we really want to?
What?
Isn't that the guy we put on the planning board who we really want to? He was always like crybaby and this and that.
Geez, I don't remember. No. Neil's the guy that used to work for the public service company, didn't he?
Okay,
He's a
Okay.
good guy.
yeah.
Look at this. We're back to going high tech. Apologies for starting a little late. We had a non-public session just prior. I'll wait for Counselor Felch and we'll kick off. It was something that we had discussed, the date. You nailed it.
I came in at the right time.
You did.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay, we're ready.
We are live.
All right, great. The hour being 7:13 PM on Monday, August 12th, 2024. I'd like to call to order the City of Laconia City Council meeting. Prior to going into our agenda, I'd ask you to join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We're joined this evening by Recording Secretary Katie Gargano. I'd ask her to please call the roll.
Counselor Cheney,
Here.
Counselor Susie,
Here.
Counselor Hoffman,
Present.
Counselor Haynes,
Here.
Counselor Bogart,
Here.
Counselor Felch,
Here.
Mayor Hosmer.
I am here. We're also joined at council table this evening by City Manager Kirk Biotti. Glenn Smith is joining us as well as our Director of Finance.
Need to ask Counselor Bogart if he's alone.
Yeah, we already know that.
For the record.
We asked him.
But it's for the
Yeah.
record.
That's
For the record right now, Counselor Bogart, you are not in attendance. You're joining us by Zoom.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, and I'm in a room by myself.
Okay. Having just come out of non-public session, I would ask that someone make a motion to seal the minutes of our non-public session. Counselor Felch, 6 months?
6 months.
6 months. Is there a second?
Second.
Second. Ask the clerk to please call the roll.
Counselor Cheney?
Yes.
Counselor Susie?
Yes.
Counselor Hoffman?
Yes.
Counselor Haynes?
Yes.
Counselor Bogart?
Yes.
Counselor Felch?
Yes.
6 votes in the affirmative. That motion passes. Thank you. Moving on to agenda item number 7. A, minutes of Laconia City Council meeting of July 22nd, 2024 were distributed to the members of the Laconia City Council on July 31st, 2024. With no corrections or changes submitted to the clerk, the minutes will be accepted as distributed. Item number 7B, City Council Budget Meeting Minutes of May 20th, 2024. These minutes of the May 2024 meeting were distributed to members of the City Council on May 28th, 2024, with no corrections or changes submitted to the clerk. The minutes will be accepted as distributed. Moving on to agenda item number 8, consent and action items. 8A, which is a temporary traffic order, 2024-12, for the Belknap Mill Sock Hop. Request to reserve parking and to waive city fees associated with the event. Kirk, could you give us just a thumbnail on that?
Yeah, this is something the Belknap Mill's done in the past. You've approved this, that's why it's on the consent and action. Friday, September 6th, they'll be blocking some of our angled parking down here on Beacon Street East, as well as using the smaller parking lot between City Hall and the Belknap Mill. They've done it in the past with no disruptions. We haven't had any issues with it, and looking to do it again.
Will you be sock hopping in Rotary Park?
Let me see what's happening that night. I haven't checked my calendar yet.
Fair enough, okay. So right now, I'm looking for a motion to move to approve temporary traffic order 2024-12 relating to the request by the Belknap Mill to reserve parking spaces in connection with the sock hop in Rotary Park as requested and waive city fees associated with the event, so made by Counselor Felch, seconded by Counselor Haynes. Is there any further discussion on the motion?
Yes,
Si-
Mayor,
Yes.
may I? It has nothing to do with the motion, but I would just ask the city manager to be aware of that Saturday is Multicultural Days, and there have been events in the past. There's been the Rotary Park needs to be picked up and cleaned up after the sock hop so that the trash barrels and things can be used for multicultural
Make a
days.
note of that and make sure no spillover goes into the next day.
Okay, thank you.
All right.
I just want to say, come on down and hear the Rockin' Daddy-O's.
Sock hopping.
Yeah.
Ask the clerk to please call the roll.
Counselor Cheney?
Yes.
Counselor Susie?
Yes.
Counselor Hoffman?
Yes.
Counselor Haynes?
Yes.
Counselor Bogart?
Yes.
Counselor Felch?
Yes.
6 votes in the affirmative, and that motion passes. Moving on to agenda item number 8B, temporary traffic order 2024-13, the Runaway Pumpkin 2024 Runaway Pumpkin 5K, 10K run, walk, and kids fun run will take place on Saturday, October 26th. The event is done in conjunction with our City of Laconia Pumpkin Festival. Proceeds from the event will benefit the WOW Trail, the recurring event. This is a recurring event, and there are no changes from last year's temporary traffic order other than the date. Right now, I'm looking for a motion to move to approve temporary traffic order 2024-13 for the 2024 Runaway Pumpkin event as presented. So made by Counselor Felch, seconded by Counselor Hoffman. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please call the roll.
Counselor Cheney?
Yes.
Counselor Susie?
Yes.
Counselor Hoffman?
Yes.
Counselor Haynes?
Yes.
Counselor Felch?
Yes.
Oh, Counselor Bogart. Sorry, you're not here.
6 votes in the affirmative, and that motion
Out of
passes.
sight, out of mind.
Agenda item number 9. This is an opportunity for citizen comments for matters not on the agenda. If you're here in the chamber this evening, and you'd like to speak to a matter not on tonight's agenda, now would be the appropriate time. Come right up. Don't have to raise your hand, just march right up.
Are we going to be talking about the development at the end of Old North Main tonight?
It's an agenda item.
Okay. I didn't see it on there, so that's what I want to talk about.
Sure. Anyone like to speak to any items or something that's not on the agenda? Okay, seeing none. Moving along to our public hearings. Agenda item number 13, public hearing, resolution 2024-14, approval of bonding for library repairs. Notice of this public hearing was made available on in the July 25th, 2024 edition of the Laconia Daily Sun, posted at Laconia City Hall, Laconia Community Center, Laconia Public Library, and the offices of the SAU. Action on this item may be taken up this evening under unfinished business. I'd like to open the public hearing at 7:19 PM. If anyone would like to speak to this, now would be the appropriate time. Welcome, Mr. Moriarty.
There it is. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. City Councilor John Moriarty. I guess maybe I'm speaking as chair of the library. I figure the less I say tonight, the sooner you get home to celebrate summer. But thank you for taking this as far as you have. The library does some wonderful things. Of course, the city, it's an architectural gem, and it inspires a lot of our patrons to use the library. It's easy to always think about the great things that are new and interesting and different. As I said to Mr. Perry 2 weeks ago, if we do our job well on this, no one will even notice because the building will still be resolute and standing in all its glory. And it's just really great to think that that building does inspire lots and lots of people from Laconia to come use it. And the glory of that building is even capable of competing with electronic devices. So it's great when people come in and use it. So thank you for your part in the stewardship of that building. And hopefully we can move forward tonight. So I'd be happy to answer any questions, but I guess it's a public hearing, so I've said all I should say, I think. Thank you
very
for your
much,
time.
Mr. Moriarty. Thank you for your leadership at the public library. Anyone else like to speak to this matter? Seeing none, I'd like to close the public hearing at 7:21 PM. As I indicated, we may take this up under unfinished business a little later. Agenda item number 13B, public hearing for ordinance 2024-149, Article 1, Fire Prevention. Notice of this public hearing was made available in the July 25th, 2024 edition of the Laconia Daily Sun and posted at Laconia City Hall, Laconia Community Center, Laconia Public Library, and the offices of the SAU. Action on this item may be taken up under unfinished business later on this evening. I'd like to open up the public hearing at 7:21 PM. Anyone who'd like to speak to this matter, now would be the appropriate time. No hands raised. No one's moving up. Would you like to say something?
I just have a comment. We're going to be requesting when we get to this on the agenda later tonight to be tabled. The Fire Marshal's office has a relatively new RSA that requires before a municipality can approve ordinance changes related to fire prevention that they have to see it first. It's in their hands. We were kind of hoping we'd have it back by now. It's not. That's okay. So we wanted to do the public hearing so we could do that, and then as soon as it's ready, it'll be back on an agenda for you to review and vote on.
Thank you very much. Yes.
You and I had a conversation about adding or amending the portion. Perhaps you could.
Fire chief's here if you don't want to.
Well,
yeah,
you were
no,
the fire chief.
we've talked to Chief Juba and I have discussed that. When you apply for a blasting permit, they have 30 days to blast, and that really could happen anytime within that window. So it's very difficult to say on Tuesday at 10 a.m. they're going to be blasting. So what we're going to do is on the permits, if you guys like the idea as opposed to being in the ordinance, it's going to be on the blasting permit itself. That when they make notification, we want to know as early as we can so we can put it on our website, and we will also put on the links and on the website itself that Bruce Genie received a blasting permit for his address, and sometime within the 30 days it could be happening, so it'll be noticed.
I had received a call from, I think others had, from a constituent with regards to blasting he knew nothing about, and I thought our adding it, either the permit or whatever, to give people at least a little fair warning, an opportunity to be fairly warned that there's going to be, I know there was blasting up at the animal control place, Humane Society a couple of years ago, and I could feel it at my house. In fact, it cracked my pool, but I would have liked to have known a little bit in advance. Didn't occur to me to bring it up before this citizen called me. So thank the mayor the manager and the fire chief for trying to work to make this work a little better.
So where we post it, worst case scenario, they'll have a 30-day window that they'll see that it's happening.
Yep.
Thank you. Anyone else from the public like to speak to this matter? Seeing none, I'd like to close the public hearing at 7:24 PM. Agenda item number 14. 14A is the Welfare Department presentation from our Finance Director, Glenn Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Good evening.
Knocking over everything, there we go.
One of each for you.
Yep, one of each. Pick one.
We all set with the? Okay, thank you. Again, as mentioned earlier, I know you have a full agenda tonight, so I'll try to keep this short, or was asked to put together a presentation just to talk about the current status of welfare in Laconia and where it stands. So, happy to provide this brief overview for Mayor and Council, and please feel free, of course, if you have any questions about that. I always like to start out any discussion of welfare in Laconia with this slide, which demonstrates Laconia, that welfare is just one small part of how we deal with the issue of poverty and homelessness within our community. We have many community partners, a lot of nonprofit organizations, a lot of community organizations, and of course, in a very major way, of course, the Laconia Police Department does a lot to help with this particular population. So when we talk about welfare, we're talking about just a small part of a large response by the city. And of course, I must also, before you yourselves, with the funding you give to these agencies throughout the year, is a vital part of making sure they get to do what they do. What really defines the welfare's role in this overall item is RSA 165, and in this way, I think the welfare response is probably a little more regimented than some of the other responses, in that we are strictly adhere to RSA 165 and what it does. What it does is it regulates who is eligible, under what conditions people are eligible, how assistance is given, under what conditions can assistance be terminated, an appeal process, et cetera, et cetera. There's a lot of RSA 165 is actually reprinted in full at the end of the welfare guidelines, which you just received. But it's our blueprint for in a broad scope of what we do here in the welfare department. So what does it say? This is the most famous part of 165. It puts local responsibility to maintain, to support people who are poor and unable to support themselves. Those people shall be relieved and maintained by the overseers of public welfare, which in Laconia is this board right here, whether or not that person has residence in that community or not. Of course, it then goes on to about many pages as to what exactly this statement means, but that's what it boils down to in the overall arching of what welfare provides. How do we implement that? Well, what we do in our day-to-day implementing of welfare is spelled out in the welfare guidelines, which you just received. This is approved by you as the overseers of public welfare, and it does, in my mind, three basic things. It defines a process for applying for general assistance, the criteria for determining eligibility, and the process for appealing a decision once that is made. And that is spelled out here. So in a very real sense, of course, how welfare is administered in Laconia is really a decision of this body. The last time we did a full-scale overhaul of our welfare guidelines was in 2022. So it's fairly recent, but of course, a lot has happened within the overall sphere of poverty and homelessness, and so maybe 2022 is not as close to the past as we may seem, given what's been happening. The introduction of the welfare guidelines, there you go. Within the guidelines, it gives a mission statement of what we do, and there's a couple key points to that. We provide interim assistance to meet the basic needs for those who do not have the resources to meet those needs themselves. A lot to unwrap there. What is a basic need? Well, might not be surprised, we're going for a couple pages as to what that includes. Starts on page 29 of the guidelines, but we have a whole list of what is basic needs, what is not. Food, of course, shelter, heat is basic needs. Internet could be a basic need if you have children at home who are in the school system, but maybe not if there's not. Cable TV is not a basic need. It goes kind of on and on. Within that, I will just say, it's determined on a case-by-case basis, as with the case within internet. If you have children at home who need the internet to go to school, it's basic. If not, as we like to say, we have an entire building full of ways to get internet access in the city of Laconia, so that doesn't necessarily mean that having that within your home is a basic need. The general principles that we apply is that we assist those who qualify. We use an application process for those to determine who qualifies. We meet only basic needs. We don't provide cash. And welfare is very rarely a no strings attached benefit. And here as we kind of get into, and we'll get this on the next slide, is that what broad strokes. Within the welfare milieu, if a person is able to help improve their situation, they must work to improve that situation. Whether that's conducting job searches, if you're unemployed, apartment searches, if you need to do something about your housing situation, but the person has to be actively working toward help themselves. We differentiate that within the welfare organization of those who are able and unable to work toward their own betterment. If you're unable, it's more of a no strings attached. Classic example. A person does manual labor for a living. They break their leg. They have a short-term medical situation that is impacting their ability to survive. We're not going to require that person go out and do a job search. If that same person were to come in who's perfectly healthy, who's unemployed, we would require a job search as a condition of receiving assistance. So if they're able to work, they must be looking for work in order to qualify for welfare assistance, unless the circumstances of that particular situation says that they cannot. If they do apply, we will support them up to the difference between their basic needs and the available income that they have. And there's a long process involved in the application where we go through every individual's, every family's basic portfolio. Do they have, what kind of transportation needs do they have? What kind of housing needs do they have? Are there any medical needs? It all gets listed out in a spreadsheet. What kind of income do they have? Do they have a job that just doesn't happen to pay enough? Do they have a temporary situation where where income might not be available? A spouse may have lost their job and they're hunting for another one. In the meantime, do they have assistance? So we put that all into the mix, and we'll provide assistance up to the difference between the basic needs and their income and their assets. Do they have assets that can be liquidated? It doesn't happen often, but we'll get a situation where a person comes in and they have 2 cars. Does one person need 2 cars? And we will advise them to maybe reduce those those assets before the taxpayers step in and assist them. So there's a lot that goes into that. And that pretty much concludes the overall view of how welfare works. Next, I kind of want to go into as to what we've been spending over the last year, unless anybody has any questions about how it works. No? Okay. FY24 statistics, we had 375 activity contacts, and what that means is that 375 groups of individuals came through the door asking for assistance. That group may be a group of one, that group may be a family of four, but there are individual concept 375. What that doesn't include are kind of what we call the knockoffs. People, they come through looking for assistance. The first question is where they live. Yeah, where do you live? And if they live in a different community, we send them to that community. So this doesn't include folks like that, but this folks that we have reason to believe could be assisted within Laconia. Those 375 contacts broke down to 155 households served. And we see here the breakdown of the household size. Mostly we deal with single people and couples. We do deal with some families, but for the most part that is not the case, just the way it's broken down over the last year. Why do people come for welfare? Not surprisingly, insufficient income is a need. Now that may be that a person has been working and is now working fewer hours because of a change at the employer level. That could be that there used to be a two-income family is now a one-income family due to circumstances. It could be that they've been living very comfortably or well in a apartment, but the rents have just been increased. So there could be any one of chances that leads to the insufficient income. We had 28 cases where people who were homeless came in to assist. That does not necessarily mean people living in a tent, because of course there's many different ways to be homeless. Could be people who are couch surfing, people living in their cars, but that was it. Medical issues. The other category is probably just usually a mix of different reasons, but this kind of breaks down as to what circumstances lead to people coming for welfare assistance within Laconia. During the year, we wrote a total of 248 vouchers, assisting 90 cases. Now, if we looked earlier on the number of cases we assisted, you'll see the number was much higher than 90. But as I say, a lot of the assistance we provide is by referring folks to agencies that are much better qualified to help them than we are. As like I said, we have no MSWs. We have no community health experts on staff here in Laconia. So many cases, the way that we assist is by referring individuals to the Partnership for Public Health, to CAP, to a recovery organization, to the Mental Health Center, to St. Vincent de Paul to care for food needs a lot, to Catholic Charities. And those folks are more set up to handle some of those needs. Of the people who did receive vouchers, for the most part per case, they were issued 2.75 vouchers. So what that usually means is across more than 1 month. It could also mean, for example, if we have to put somebody up at a hotel in Franklin, well, that's 2 vouchers, one for the taxi ride to get them over to Franklin and the other for the hotel. Maximum number of vouchers, we have were 12, which it's more pointing to the fact that we are now in a situation where we're dealing with more people for long term. Now, at the beginning we said we provide interim assistance, and that is what we are set up to do. That interim assistance is supposed to help folks as they are moved into one of those other agencies that are better suited to treat. But in today's environment, a lot of those other agencies are backlogged themselves. So we may have somebody who really needs to have the medical treatment in an assisted living facility, for example, but there is no place in that facility. So they stay with us at Laconia expense until that happens, and we're seeing more of that this year, this time. Average per voucher is $570. Total expense $141,000, and the average expense per case is about $1,500. How does that compare? Well, two items here, and the first I'll go down to the bottom is how that compares, and that is to show you an extent of why the welfare budget is the way it is that in FY 2019, the last pre-pandemic year, we issued 200 vouchers with an average per voucher of $278. Last year, 208 vouchers, number of vouchers about the same, but the average per voucher is $629. And that is, there's many reasons for that, but the primary reason for that is with shelter and cost of shelter and housing. As you can see at the top of the chart, 92% of everything we spent was on housing. And getting back to our partner agencies facing backlogs, and you heard me say this before, the time was we could easily refer somebody to Belknap House, to Cary House. Those agencies are now, they're still doing a very good job, but they are overwhelmed. And so when they're overwhelmed, we find other locations which are much more expensive than those. And that's why, part of the reason why you see that tremendous increase in the cost per voucher. And I hope that answers your questions.
Thank you, Glenn. That was very, very helpful. Just, quite frankly, page 15, the number 92.59% of all welfare expenses are housing related is staggering. That combined with the dollar amount, which is almost 2.5 times what we're paying out previously. This money, these vouchers, are they, can you walk through maybe just a typical person who might come in, say, I don't have a place to live? What's the process look for someone who we might at that point, they're at least housing insecure, if not completely homeless? What's it look like?
Sure. Well, every case is different, but generally we'll go through the application process and try to determine why this person is facing insecurity in their household. Sometimes it is a case where several months of back rent have been piling up, and we're able to work with the landlord to work out a repayment agreement. Other cases, it might be like a change of employment, for example. But typically, the person would come in, they'd fill out the application. We would, as I say, would do the math under the application to find out why that is, and try to work out a way to get that person back on track. We would also look at areas where they might have other resources available to them, a relative who can help them out, for example, or another opportunity that maybe they haven't considered yet. So we work through all of that and try to work out on a case-by-case basis what is the best solution for that individual. Now, in some cases, if it's if the housing is stable, but the income is temporarily unstable, then what we will do is help them stay where they are, because we can see the end in sight. We can see what they need is not to, in the long term, lower their cost of housing, but just to get them through a rough spot. Other folks, and it's in the guidelines, through, in a lot of cases, no fault of their own, they now no longer afford to live where they're living. Their employer has cut back on hours, something along those lines, and we work with them just to find a place to live and a living situation that is within their new budget. And some people just need a little hand-holding to get them to that location. Others, when it comes time to find them housing, if they don't have housing, or if there's something, we pick up the phone and beat the pavement. The person who, Kathy Raymond, is our welfare technician, does an excellent job with this. She has a very good relationship with many different landlords throughout the area. She'll get on the phone, call the rooming houses, call the local hotels, call the shelters. We were able to actually place somebody in Cary House the other day. We're very excited because it's been a long time since we've been able to do that. So they kind of do what she can to kind of put them in place. I hope that answers your question.
It does. What strikes me here, and I'm trying to get a better grip of it, are a couple things here. And this is on page 4, and it's the highlight. I think you highlighted it. Whether or not he has residence there. So that's talking about domicile within the city?
That's correct.
So if someone comes here and says, I've just left Manchester, where my luck ran out, and I need a place to land, and I want you to help me, does that apply to the person? Because they're not, well, they might be domiciled at that moment because they're present in the municipality, they're present, they're going to stay for an indeterminate amount of time. How do you handle that situation?
Not to sound like a broken record, but every case is different.
Yeah.
But in that particular case, if a person walks into the welfare office and says, I just got here from Manchester.
Yep.
The law does not allow us to say, well, too bad. Go back to Manchester and see what they can do.
That's how I kind of read that.
Well,
That's how I read it. I agree.
that's
yeah.
correct, that's
Yeah.
correct, that's correct. But what we do is we call Manchester and we find out what's going on. So we assist them, and sometimes that assistance means putting them back in touch with their support network in a different town. And that actually happens quite often. Okay, wasn't me. So that actually happens quite often. But the law is clear that we cannot deny assistance to somebody who is standing in front of us simply because of where they live. Now, we may deny them for another reason. It's also fairly common that once we do the budget and we see that maybe you don't need this high-priced cell phone plan, and when you go to a lower-priced plan, and voila, all of a sudden you can pay your rent. And that also happens quite a bit. But yes, we are required to respond to anybody who applies assistance, even if they are just a new arrival in town.
Can you, I'm sure maybe what you have is maybe more anecdotal than anything. How often does that occur? Someone walks in and says, geez, I ran out of luck in Concord or Nashua or Manchester, and now I'm here.
I would say not often, but probably growing. Now, whether that means we ultimately end up writing a check to those people is another story based on case by case. And I will say something, I'm sorry I didn't mention earlier, what the law does allow is if, in that situation, if we assist somebody, just got off the boat from Manchester, the bus, the law does allow us to then pursue reimbursement from Manchester.
Oh, how's that work?
That actually works pretty well.
Really?
I mean, it really varies from community to community, and I'd say we are on both sides of that.
Yeah, I bet.
That transaction. There are some communities who are willing to kind of step up. There are some who are less so, but I think that's a much smaller group. Because ultimately, welfare does not stop at the city boundaries, and there's a very welfare directors from throughout the state tend to work really well together, and they realize it is a single issue, and so from that perspective, there is a lot of working together and reimburse, and everybody reads the same RSA, and the RSA says we can pursue reimbursement.
All right. So the other question I have on this, and these housing vouchers, is this primarily, and can you actually do a drill down on this data? Is it primarily reimbursement directed to landlords, or are they vouchers for people who are experiencing homelessness to hotels or motels?
If the question is who is the voucher written to?
Yes.
We never give a housing voucher to a client.
Right.
I would say right now, because we have actually a good relationship with several different hotels in the area, I would say it's probably, without having the numbers in front of me, I'd say it's probably 50-50 between landlords who are running apartment complexes or rooming houses and hotels, motels type areas.
And is that information available?
Oh, yes.
Yeah, okay.
Yep.
All right, I'm sorry, I dominated the time. Does anyone have any questions for the Finance Director.
So once someone starts receiving assistance, is there a time limit on how long they can receive assistance?
There's no time limit on how long they can receive assistance, but there is a limit based, again, on the individual circumstances of they need to be looking for work. They need to be, I mean, it varies from situation to situation. The guy with a broken leg, we're not going to ask them to look for work. But if you're able to work and the lack of work is the problem, there is a requirement that you do so many job searches per week. If the problem is the lack of housing, you're required to do so many apartment searches per week. You're also required to apply for assistance from the other partner agencies, that's mostly the state programs, which can then assist maybe with food, and so now more funding is available for housing. So it's not necessarily time-based, but if the person is working that system, then they can cycle through the system, our system, fairly quickly.
So just follow up. What would you say is the average amount of time someone receives assistance from the city? Are we talking
I'd
couple
say 1
months?
to 2 months.
Okay.
The average vouchers were 2.75. So, but I'll say in some cases, a person would get 2 vouchers in a single month, depending upon their situation. They might get a rent voucher and a utility voucher, for example.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Thank you. Is there any requirement or condition set on having to accept a job if it's offered? In terms of welfare, if we
Yes,
find
sir.
out they were offered a job at ABC and they turned it down, does that affect?
It certainly does.
Okay.
It certainly does. And also, if they accept a job and then they voluntarily leave that job, there is a restriction on them coming back for additional services within a period of time. Now, if they leave that job for cause, I mean, discrimination or whatever, then there is of course a situation of dealing with that. But if they just decided not to show up, for example, then there's a restriction on coming back for additional benefits. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Thank you very much, Mr. Smith. Greatly appreciated.
Yes.
Thank you. Take care.
Moving on to agenda item 15. I was going to give up my mayor's report or remarks this evening, but I see Chief Canfield seated in the back, and it reminded me of just something I wanted to share. You know, we often think of our police force and the work they do while in uniform out in the street and in cruisers. I don't know if all of you maybe were made aware of the effort that Chief Canfield and his team put into visiting a 4-year-old boy who was in a car accident a couple weeks ago, lost his sister, and this young boy is really in the throes of very serious injuries. But the non-traditional work that people in our city do to make lives a little bit better sometimes goes unnoticed. And as I see Chief Canfield and his Lieutenant Hubbard, along with the department, wrapped a number of gifts for this young 4-year-old Philip. And I don't know if you've seen the pictures on social media, but the joy that those gifts brought to that little boy's face are really remarkable, as well as the contribution the Police Relief Association made to Philip's mom, who has stayed by his bedside ever since he was brought to the hospital in Boston and has remained there. And he has a long road ahead of him, but it's noteworthy that you know, they're pretty good in their uniform doing more traditional duties that we expect of them, but they're also pretty darn good at going above and beyond and caring for people when unfortunate circumstances befall them. So just want to say a shout out and thank you to you and your department, Chief Canfield, for what you do. Council comments. Counselor Felch.
To go right along with that, I want to thank the police department for putting on National Night Out last Tuesday. They do a great job with all the events they have with the motorcycle displays and the drone displays and serving almost 500 hot dogs. And I just want to thank them for everything they do.
Anyone else? Any other council comments?
I do, Mayor.
Counselor Haynes.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
It was 5 years ago, last Sunday, that the community surrounded Joseph's Church in hoping to save the building from demolition. I just want that it's not forgotten, and the community, I can only speak for myself, but it's not forgotten.
I think it's also interesting to note the application is still on file.
Yes. Second of all, it may sound like a commercial, and it's not, but there were 48 people that got aboard the train for the Historical Society and rode all the way from the Laconia Station to Meredith and back. And it was an enjoyable trip. And for anyone that's never seen the Paugus Bay and Winnipesaukee and Meredith from the side of the tracks, it's a great trip. And the train did a great job. And one of the conductors is right there.
It was our pleasure to have you aboard. You're all welcome.
So it was a great trip, and the Historical Society did a great job.
Any other council comments? Councilor Cheney, go right ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have a couple of items tonight. One is, going through Lakeport recently, I happened to glance over and remember there used to be a GAR building in the Weirs, in Lakeport. I don't believe there's even a marker on it at this point, but I'm not sure. And I mention that because it then caused me to think about a number of other places or things in the city. Near my home is the Meredith Center Pound, small place where animals were kept back in the 1800s. There are a number of those other places. I was wondering if we could ask the city manager to contact the Historical Society and ask from them a list of places they think are historically valuable, and maybe we could add to that list at some point and see if we can't do something to recognize them and assure that they're maintained going forward. That's number one.
I get that one.
Okay.
Got it.
I wanted to tell the council that, as your representative to the planning board, I've attended one or two technical review committee meetings. And at the last planning board meeting, because of that, at the last planning board meeting, I asked the planning assistant director to ask the director if they couldn't notify members of the council when there is a TRC involving something in their ward. Doesn't mean you have to go, doesn't mean you have to show any particular concern, but at the same time, as I found, as it relates to the communications center up at the new proposed communication center up across from Rubbing Mills Field, I was glad to be at that committee, because I think I was able to add some thought about the city sewer and water being carried up to that site, because I'm familiar with the ward and where those things are, and the state seemed very enthusiastic about that idea, which could save them money and could help us extend water and sewer up that hill and beyond. So, again, I've asked that the planning department notify each member of the council, not about every one, but any that are in your ward, so you'd have an opportunity to participate if you chose to. I had a constituent call about a noise problem. I won't get specific, or at least right at the moment I won't. But I reviewed the noise ordinance because of the complaint and realized there's some confusion in that ordinance. It talks about the hours that you're allowed to have outside noise, outside speakers or whatever. I think it goes to like 9 o'clock
It's either 9
on
or
the
10.
week.
It's either 9 or 10.
And then on the weekends up to 10.
Yeah.
But then other places you look, it appears as though there is no noise limiting. So I would ask that the ordinance committee review the noise ordinance. I think it's been quite a while since it's been reviewed and amended, and ask that the committee look at that and see if we can't clean it up so that we don't have citizens who have to listen to loud music or whatever noises at 1 or 2 in the morning. I could count on the fact that on a weekend at 10, on weeknight at 8, or whatever the committee may ultimately determine. But, so I'd ask that the mayor direct the committee to review that ordinance. I was going to ask if there's any update on the, where we are at with the parking garage. And I don't ask for one tonight, but I wonder if the council could get one at some time in the near future.
Right up the city manager there.
And finally, I had a note about the property on Parade in Old North Main. I'll hold off until we get to that portion, sir. Thank you very much.
Any other council comments? How about, yeah, go right ahead.
I just want to go along with the noise ordinance to have the city manager give us some comparisons from other towns and cities.
Good idea.
How about committee reports? Any committee reports? Liaison reports?
Just made mine.
You've used up your time, Council. Citizen, on our agenda item number 19, citizens request to comment on current agenda items. If there's a current agenda item you'd like to speak to, now would be the appropriate time to step forward. No reason to raise your hand. Just step right up. Step right up. Easy.
Mayor, councilors, Patrick Wood, Ward 3. I wanted to just comment on very quickly on 3 things. One, thank you for your support of the 200th celebration anniversary of Congregational Church of Laconia. Greatly appreciated.
You're welcome.
Secondly, after listening to Mr. Smith's report, the Housing Authority has 500 vouchers that it provides to different landlords and property owners in the city of Laconia. But we can't use all of them because there aren't enough apartments available. So that's part of our problem that we're facing, and we're going to talk about that a little later this evening. The third thing is, on the agenda, we're going to be talking, you're going to be talking about the housing issue and the property on North Main Street. And I just, if you're going to be setting up a committee, I want to make sure that you add the Housing Authority to be one of the members of that committee, because we have the expertise, have the knowledge, and we would be, I think, very helpful in doing that. And as a part of that, as the mayor and the city manager know, we have a meeting on Thursday, the Housing Authority, and we're going to be learning about workforce vouchers. I know nothing about them, but we're going to be hearing from our attorney about that on Thursday. And that may be something that the city can receive some substantial benefit from as well. So more to come on that, I hope, in a positive sense, but that's Thursday. So thank you.
Thank you, Patrick. Anyone else like to speak to matters on tonight's agenda? Okay.
Mr. Mayor,
Mm-hmm.
there was a lady that wanted to speak at the time, bring up Old North Main.
Yes.
I think
That's
it's
a
time
current
for her.
agenda item. Would you like to speak towards it?
Yes, sorry,
come right, take your time.
My name is Judy Francine, and I live on Driftwood Drive. And I saw in the newspaper that you were looking for neighborhood volunteers to sit on that potential development of that property on Old North Main and Parade.
Yeah, the article had some inaccuracies. That's a couple steps. It could very well be a couple steps down the road.
Yep.
If you will.
Yeah,
So,
I just would like to volunteer to sit on that committee.
all right. Would you be so kind as to drop off just a Post-it or a business card or something, or with Kirk, the city manager, or is there
Yep.
some way you can get it? That way we can
Do
keep
that.
you informed. Would that be okay?
Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Judy. Anyone else? All right, seeing none, we'll go right to the city manager's report.
As you can see from the building permits,
No, please.
Don't get any ideas.
Believe me, I won't get that. Talk about extended hours. Yeah.
All right, thank you, Mr. Mayor. So including your packet is financial and operational trends for August. Building construction numbers are down a little bit from last year, the year before, but they're within a range that we're at least comfortable with. Fire calls were a little bit down for the month in what they did the last couple of years, but continue to be trending upward for the total of the year. And you see they had a couple of significantly busy days, one of which was 27 calls. That's when you're doing more than call an hour, that is a very busy day for the department. Public assistance data, one of our largest numbers we've had probably ever in a single month. And you heard the presentation night. Most of that is in what we put out, housing vouchers. And, we're continuing not only to work on that, but track it moving forward. Police department stayed busy. I just want to make a note. I know in the accidents they have to adjust the numbers a little bit that are in there. But I just want, later on in the, on to new business, you're going to be receiving a request to approve a grant or to send it to a public hearing for their technical accident reconstruction team. I think it comes under a different name now, but it was their old TAR team. They do all of Belknap County with their team. Chief Canfield runs it, and he notifies me anytime that, certainly in the city if we have an accident that they go to, but he also notifies me anytime they go to any of the other communities. This summer, he's called me a lot more than I can remember in the last couple of years. Just been very busy, and I think it's just kudos to how much of the work that they do, both in the city but outside as well with that team.
can I ask?
Well, I'm gonna follow up with him and get those numbers checked out. Yep. I think there's a couple mistakes in the accident numbers, but property tax collection, right at where we would expect it to be at this time, as is the overtime. We know that overtime on the next page is always busy in July and August, because that's when we start to see vacations, so nothing unexpected there. Motor vehicle registration's a little bit ahead of where we would expect it to be. That's a good thing. Parks and Rec, a lot of use requests this month. Nothing really else on that page. Under reserve balances, just the only note I want to make is when you look at school, the numbers that were approved for some of their high school project and some of the other stuff has not been removed yet. I know at least one or two councils have talked to members of the trustees of the trust. They'd asked them some questions. Finance director, myself, and the superintendent of schools are working with the trustees of the trust. They had some clarification that they needed and requested out of us. So those numbers will be adjusted soon. And if there's any major adjustments that need to be, they would come back to you just for a confirming vote. So that's why you haven't seen those numbers come out yet. Boat taxes are, again, a little ahead of pace. And on the last page is the EMS billing report. I think we spent a lot of time on this over the last couple months. We do tend to see a little bit decrease in the amount of total transports the ambulance is doing. And we adjusted that with the way our fee structure went. as well as state Medicaid in the amount of reimbursables that we're gonna receive, will offset some of those projected losses, because we're anticipating that they won't be losses this year. And that's all I have out of that report.
Kirk, I haven't discussed this with you before. I don't want to blindside you, but I just want to, I see that we have, unfortunately, more graffiti on the walls of businesses along the Main Street corridor and business district. That is, flies in the face in everything that we've tried to do in the Main Street corridor with promoting more people visiting us and businesses taking root. I realize that the damage done to a private building is probably the private owner's responsibility. I'm wondering if you could look into what's the process if we wanted to get that cleaned, and how much would it be?
We can do that.
I feel badly for the business owners, the property owners. I realize it's not our responsibility as a city, but it impacts everything that we're trying to do here. And I'd almost like to say, could we afford to just clean these buildings? Because it really does burn me to see some of this nonsense that's spray painted on buildings for no good reason. We all appreciate art to some extent. This isn't art. This is just kids, in my mind, kids acting out. Second of all, positioning our cameras, maybe you can work with the chief. It'd be nice to have some more cameras around to just maybe pick up on stuff like this. Just really disappointing to see this. Just put it out there for you.
Yep, we can certainly work on both of those issues related to that.
I would submit to you, Mr. Mayor, that, and this is not a criticism, but our, for lack of a better term, our failure to be able to stop that certainly justifies, I think, what you're asking for me. I would wholeheartedly support the idea of getting more cameras up downtown so we can see what's going on and try to put a stop to that. And I know the department's shorthanded, and that makes it difficult, but if we can get somebody walking downtown at night, that probably would help, even if it's only an hour here and an hour there. Something I think the manager can talk with the chief about.
Glad to.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks. Thanks.
That's all I have.
Okay. Let's move on to agenda item number 21 under new business. Item 21A, request to lower the speed limit and restrict truck traffic on Pickerel Pond Road. Kirk, would you be so kind as to get us up to speed? What's going on here?
Yeah, this came from a public comment at a couple meetings ago, requesting to see if we could decrease the speed limit and the large trucks that are going over Pickerel Pond Road. We have had an opportunity to go out there and start doing some work out there. We talked about the reclaiming. So, the concern of the public that came forward was, are the higher speeds and the bigger trucks going to cause a problem? Under state law, you are allowed to, you can set the speed limit for as low as 25 miles an hour. We can't ban all trucks, but what you can do is we can set weight restrictions by road. We do that in the wintertime anyhow, and you can do it by road at any time. So if either of those two things or both of those two things is something we want to explore more, all we're looking for tonight is to request a public hearing, have the conversations more. I'm sure it'll out some of the residents from Pickerel Pond Road to discuss it, and we can move forward with your recommendations.
Okay. So right now on this item, we're looking for a motion to move to schedule a public hearing on August 26th, 2024, to receive public input on the request to lower the speed and maximum weight limits and restrict truck traffic on Pickerel Pond Road. So made by Councilor Cheney, seconded by Councilor Felch. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'd ask the clerk to please call the roll.
Counselor Cheney?
Yes.
Counselor Susie?
Yes.
Counselor Hoffman?
Yes.
Counselor Haynes?
Yes.
Counselor Bogart?
Yes.
Counselor Felch?
Yes.
6 votes in the affirmative, that motion passes. Item number 21B, Resolution 2024-16, acceptance of an Office of Community-Oriented Policing Services COPS grant in the amount of $77,000 to fund fiscal year '24 COPS Technology and Equipment Program Invitational Solicitation. That's a mouthful. Kirk, would you walk us through that?
Sure. This is a request for a hearing for grant acceptance. This is some of their measuring equipment, the laser equipment that they do when they map a scene of a serious accident. It used to be a lot of this was done by physical measuring by the officers. They did get some advanced technology. As we all know with technology, that goes by the wayside relatively quickly. This is an increase to that technology, and they were able to get a grant with no cost to the city. So we just need a public hearing and you guys to approve their acceptance of that grant.
All right, brilliant. Right now, this is a series of 3 motions. The first is to move to waive a reading of Resolution 2024-16 in its entirety and to read by title only. So made by Councilor Cheney, seconded by Councilor Felch. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'd ask the clerk to please call the roll.
Counselor Cheney?
Yes.
Counselor Susie?
Yes.
Counselor Hoffman?
Yes.
Counselor Haynes?
Yes.
Counselor Bogart?
Yes.
Counselor Felch?
Yes.
6 votes in the affirmative, the motion passes. Next, looking for a motion to move a first reading of Resolution 2024-16 relative to an Office of Community-Oriented Policing Services grant in the amount of $77,000 to fund the fiscal year '24 COPS Technology and Equipment Program Invitational Solicitation. So made by Councilor Susie, seconded by Councilor Hoffman. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'd ask the clerk to call the roll.
Counselor Cheney?
Yes.
Counselor Susie?
Yes.
Counselor Hoffman?
Yes.
Counselor Haynes?
Yes.
Counselor Bogart?
Yes.
Counselor Felch?
Yes.
6 votes in the affirmative, that motion passes. And finally, on this matter, looking for a motion to move to schedule a public hearing on August 26, 2024, during the regular city council meeting to gather public input prior to any action being taken. So made by Councilor Susie, seconded by Councilor Cheney. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, I'd ask the clerk to call the roll.
Counselor Cheney?
Yes.
Counselor Susie?
Yes.
Counselor Hoffman?
Yes.
Counselor Haynes?
Yes.
Counselor Bogart?
Yes.
Counselor Felch?
Yes.
6 votes in the affirmative, and that motion passes. Item 21C, Resolution 2024-177, acceptance of an Office for Community-Oriented Policing Services grant in the amount of $175,000 to fund police officer recruitment and retention for the Laconia Police Department. Want to say something about it?
Do I want to say, no, this is just, it's another grant
welcome to.
opportunity, a large grant opportunity. It is hit it recruitment and retention. It's how do we get more officers in and get them to stay. It's going to offer a recruitment, marketing campaign, officer mentor program. So there's a lot that they'll do. I'm sure the chief could speak to the specifics, but there's a lot they'll do. And it's the same thing that we've been talking about in all of our departments for at least a couple years now on recruitment and retention. And this would be something that'll certainly benefit the police department.
Brilliant. Series of 3 motions here. The first one is a motion to move to waive a reading of Resolution 2024-17 in its entirety and to read by title only. So made by Councilor Cheney, seconded by Councilor Felch. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'd ask the clerk to please call the roll.
Counselor Cheney?
Yes.
Counselor Susie?
Yes.
Counselor Hoffman?
Yes.
Counselor Haynes?
Yes.
Counselor Bogart?
Yes.
Counselor Felch?
Yes.
6 votes in the affirmative, that motion passes. Next on this matter, looking for a motion to move a first reading of Resolution 2024-17 relative to acceptance of an Office of Community-Oriented Policing Services COPS grant in the amount of $175,000 to fund police officer recruitment and retention for the Laconia Police Department. So made by Officer Susie. Councilor Susie, seconded by Chief Cheney. Yes. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, I'd ask the clerk to call the roll.
Counselor Cheney?
Yes.
Counselor Susie?
Yes.
Counselor Hoffman?
Yes.
Counselor Haynes?
Yes.
Counselor Bogart?
Yes.
Counselor Felch?
Yes.
6 votes in the affirmative. Finally, on this matter, looking for a motion to move to schedule a public hearing on August 26, 2024, during the regular city council meeting to gather public input prior to any action being taken. So made by Councilor Hoffman, seconded by Councilor Haynes. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, I'd ask the clerk to please call the roll.
Counselor Cheney?
Yes.
Counselor Susie?
Yes.
Counselor Hoffman?
Yes.
Counselor Haynes?
Yes.
Counselor Bogart?
Yes.
Counselor Felch?
Yes.
Next, agenda item number 21D. Acceptance of funds from Gary Bossy in the amount of $5,000 to fund the development of a firearms range for the Laconia Police Department. per the City Council Resolution 2019-24 and RSA 31:95-B, acceptance and expenditure of unanticipated funds in the amount less than $10,000 made available during the fiscal year require approval of the City Council. By acceptance of these funds, the Laconia Police Department will be able to start the planning process to develop a firearms range for the Laconia Police Department. The police department currently uses the Town of Guilford Police Department range for qualifications. While the use of the Town of Guilford's range is free to the Laconia Police Department, the use of the range has to be scheduled. By developing a firearms range for the Laconia Police Department, there would be much more flexibility for Laconia Police Department officers to train at the range. It is recommended that the city accepts the $5,000 donation from Gary Bossy. So right now, I'm looking for a motion to move to approve acceptance of the funds from Gary A. Bossy in the amount of $5,000 to fund the development of a firearms range for the Laconia Police Department and to authorize the city manager to sign any documents regarding this matter. So made by Councilor Cheney, seconded by Councilor Hoffman. Is there any further discussion on this matter? Seeing none, I'd ask the clerk to please call the roll.
Counselor Cheney?
Yes.
Counselor Susie?
Yes.
Counselor Hoffman?
Yes.
Counselor Haynes?
Yes.
Counselor Bogart?
Yes.
Counselor Felch?
Yes.
6 votes in the affirmative, and that motion passes. This all comes to fruition. This is a nice haul, eh, Chief? Agenda item number 21E, request to schedule 2 public hearings for the Community Development Finance Authority. What we're looking to do here is to request 2 public hearings on August, not tonight,
No, should say the 26th.
should be the 26th, 2024, during the regular city council meeting. I'm happy to read this. I probably should. A proposed application to the Community Development Finance Authority for up to $25,000 in the CDBG Planning Study Grant Funds. Of the grant funds, up to $3,500 will be retained by the city for administrative costs associated with the project. Up to $21,500 of the funds will be sub-granted to the Community Action Program, Belknap, Merrimack. The CAP proposes to make improvements to Laconia's Senior Center Kitchen, 184 Beacon Street West, Laconia, that will allow them to provide daily congregate meals and expand program opportunities. The CDBG funds would assist with the pre-development of the project, including pre-construction planning, preliminary architectural design, and capital campaign planning costs. The Anti-Displacement and Relocation Assistance Program for the Merrimack Belknap Community Action Program study is the second hearing. So right now, we have 2 motions. First one is to move to schedule a public hearing on August 26th, 2024, during the regular city council meeting regarding a proposed application to the Community Development Finance Authority for up to $25,000 in CDBG planning study grant funds. Of those funds, $3,500 will be trained by the city for administrative costs associated with the project, and $21,500 of the funds will be sub-granted to the Community Action Program, Belknap, Merrimack. So made by Councilor Felch, seconded by Councilor Haynes. Is there any further discussion on this motion? Seeing none, I'd ask the clerk to please call the roll.
Counselor Cheney?
Yes.
Counselor Susie?
Yes.
Counselor Hoffman?
Yes.
Counselor Haynes?
Yes.
Counselor Bogart?
Yes.
Counselor Felch?
Yes.
6 votes in the affirmative of that motion. Right now, looking for a second motion to move to schedule a public hearing on August 26, 2024 during the regular city council meeting regarding the Anti-Displacement and Relocation Assistance Plan for the Merrimack Belknap County Community Action Program study. So made by Councilor Haynes, seconded by Councilor Felch. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, I'd ask the clerk to please call the roll.
Counselor Cheney?
Yes.
Counselor Susie?
Yes.
Counselor Hoffman?
Yes.
Counselor Haynes?
Yes.
Counselor Bogart?
Yes.
Counselor Felch?
Yes.
6 votes in the affirmative, of that motion passes. Item number 21F, temporary traffic order 2024-14, the New Hampshire Pumpkin Festival. Looking for a temporary traffic order, which is attached to your packet this evening for the Pumpkin Festivals for the council's review and approval. Also attached is a map identifying the proposed street closures in the downtown areas reflected in the TTO. At this time, the Lakes Region Chamber of Commerce has not yet identified street closures for the activities planned for the Weirs Beach area. When that is completed, another temporary traffic order will be presented to the council. Right now, I'll be looking for a motion to move to approve temporary traffic order 2024-14 for the 2024 New Hampshire Pumpkin Festival as presented. So made by Councilor Felch, seconded by Councilor Hoffman. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, I'd ask the clerk to call the roll.
Counselor Cheney?
Yes.
Counselor Susie?
Yes.
Counselor Hoffman?
Yes.
Counselor Haynes?
Yes.
Counselor Bogart?
Yes.
Counselor Felch?
Yes.
6 votes in the affirmative, that motion passes. Agenda item number 21D, ordinance 2024-189-5:A, waivers relating to public sewer connections. Kirk, would you be so kind as to...
Sure. So certainly, so currently, if you are on septic, because there's no city sewer that runs within 250 feet of your house, and we put sewer in, you are required to connect. That's how currently our ordinances work. We are proposing essentially aligning ourselves a little bit more with the way the state goes, but it also gives you an opportunity to, the city, an opportunity to waive that requirement for hookup. So if we put sewer into we'll just pick a street, you go on, you don't have sewer running down your street, we had sewer running down your street. Right now, you have to hook up. With this ordinance passed, you would have the option to hook up. There'd be a few caveats that you have to have. It has to, the age can't be before 1985. It has to be working order. It has to be a legitimate septic system. But this gives you the opportunity to opt out of it, request the city waive it. We are putting sewer into some different areas of the city that have never had it before, and the concern was us reaching out and saying, all right, now that you just put this septic system in, now we're putting it sewer by your house, you have to hook up. When we brought it to the Public Works Subcommittee, I can't remember if it went to Public Works or to Government Ordinances. They agreed that it's mandating that they do it for really no reason other than we're now running sewer wasn't the direction that they wanted to go. So that's why it's in front of you for an ordinance update.
Any questions of City Manager, Councilor Susie?
How many years did you say they're going by?
Your sewer system would have to be 1985 or newer.
That's when the EPA started setting.
And that's in the state RSA.
Yep.
That year is RNSA.
Okay, because I know when they put it up my street, I had to hook on.
Right, and you would have to do that today unless we change the ordinance.
Okay, if there are no further questions, we can move along to a motion. So right now, I'm looking for a motion to move to waive a reading of ordinance 2024-189-5:a, waivers in its entirety, to read by title only, so made by Councilor Cheney, seconded by Councilor Susie. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, I'd ask the clerk to please call the roll.
Counselor Cheney?
Yes.
Counselor Susie?
Yes.
Counselor Hoffman?
Yes.
Counselor Haynes?
Yes.
Counselor Bogart?
Yes.
Counselor Felch?
Yes.
6 votes in the affirmative, that motion passes. Next, we're looking for a motion to move a first reading of ordinance 2024-189-5:a, waivers relative to public sewer connections. So made by Counselor Felch, seconded by Counselor Hoffman. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please listen to Katie call the roll.
Counselor Cheney?
Yes.
Counselor Susie?
Yes.
Counselor Hoffman?
Yes.
Counselor Haynes?
Yes.
Counselor Bogart?
Yes.
Counselor Felch?
Yes.
6 votes in the affirmative. That motion passes. Finally, on this matter, I'm looking for a motion to move to schedule a public hearing on August 26th, 2024, during the regular city council meeting to gather public input prior to any action being taken. So made by Counselor Cheney, seconded by Counselor Haynes. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, I'd ask the clerk to please call the roll.
Counselor Cheney?
Yes.
Counselor Susie?
Yes.
Counselor Hoffman?
Yes.
Counselor Haynes?
Yes.
Counselor Bogart?
Yes.
Counselor Felch?
Yes.
6 votes in the affirmative, and that motion passes. Okay. Anybody need a bathroom break or a recess for 5 minutes here? We've been at it for 2 hours right now, ma'am, if you'd like.
Thank you, no.
Let's go on a recess for 5 minutes, 10 minutes at the most, okay? is.
Mics are back on.
Lights are on. Thank you. All right, let's call the city council meeting back to order at 8:34 PM. Agenda item 21H, which is listed as potential development of city-owned land at the intersection of Parade Road and Old North Main Street. This, as you recall, was a parcel of land that the city took possession of in exchange for breaking a 99-year lease for a parcel of land that we had leased with the state of New Hampshire off of Meredith Center Road. If I'm not mistaken, that land now is identified as the potential new 911 building. So in exchange for breaking that lease, we took into possession what is labeled here, number 1 on your map, at the intersection, as I said, Old North Main Street and North Main Street. That is approximately a 10-acre parcel in a residential area with a performance zoning overlay. One of the ideas in entering into this agreement with the state and taking ownership of this land was that it was, from my perspective anyway, more conducive to the potential development of housing than the parcel of land on the top of the hill of Meredith Center Road. Though at the time, that parcel on Meredith Center Road could very well have been public facilities of some sort, whether it be in DPW or what have you, but, and we still need to do that. But at the time, when we remain certainly in a housing shortage right now, one of the, not only are we short housing, but we are even more short on, if you can say that, affordable housing, workforce housing. And of course, the cost drivers associated with this, as we all know, is the cost of the land to acquire, if you're a private developer or you're a public entity, the cost of lumber and all the associated materials that go into building homes, and also the cost of labor, which is exponentially higher now than it was, say, 4 or 5 years ago. So the idea of without some government subsidy of some sort, whether it be the federal government or the state government, it's very difficult, if not impossible, to build truly affordable workforce housing right now. And as I've said to all of you, I believe, and I've said to the public, when I think of workforce housing, I think of it as housing that our newer city employees can afford to live in. That person might be making somewhere between $40,000 and $75,000, depending on which department they might go and work for. Might also be open to people who like LNAs. Might be people who work maybe in some of the advanced manufacturing places that we have in and around the city. Recently, I had an opportunity to go and visit the cottages at Back River Road in Dover with the 12 other mayors from across the state, and took a look at some of the projects that they've done there. Standalone homes, approximately 550 square feet, 1 bedroom. Some are 1 bedroom and a loft. They're not big at 550 square feet, but what they are able to do is we're able to drive down the cost per square foot to construct, to create a true community by having a higher density than maybe other areas demand. Put the parking on the outside, the ability maybe to connect to the city water and city sewage. When I did the tour, I mean, not only was I impressed with the outward community, what the community looked like, but what I was particularly impressed with, that they were renting them to teachers and to public employees. And, you know, it's small, but incredibly comfortable, and gave me a sense of a real community. So coming back and thinking about what I saw in Dover, and talking with the developers there, who one of them happens to be from Belknap County, it really got me to thinking about this parcel here. And again, the potential and possibility of it. So I have drafted before you here a draft RFQ, RFI, trying to solicit some interest from developers. Doesn't make any difference where they're from, but maybe statewide certainly, who may have some interest in looking at this piece of land here and either buying it from the city and building workforce housing, maybe leasing it from the city on a ground lease of some sort, I don't know. But what I'd like to do here is at least open it up to more creative minds who are familiar with doing this type of work and soliciting interest. Now, of course, this doesn't commit us to doing anything. All it does is open it up and say, we're interested in talking about this piece of land. Everything we get in return from that may not be worth our consideration, and we may just decide, well, we'll have a plan B, whatever that may be for this land. Or some of the, hopefully, respondents will have something that's kind of interesting and certainly worth us as a council to consider further. So on this drafted RFQ, it lays out some of the things that we might be looking for, and by sharing it with you tonight, I'm looking for perhaps some feedback. And I'll ask you to flip it over to what might be page 2. And proposals that we're looking for, I think would be more impressive if they were weighted to maximize the number of below-market rental or lease units. When I think of below market, I'm thinking workforce housing. I'm not looking for transitional housing. I'm not looking for necessarily congregate housing. I don't think it's appropriate place for apartment buildings or shelters. That's not what I'm thinking of. And it's also not consistent with the character of that neighborhood, which I think is probably one of the finest neighborhoods within the city. We're looking for something that balances the idea of the density and the preservation of green space. Don't want to, I would suggest we maybe don't want to have it paved over, for lack of a better term. Proposals that are congruent with the residential character of the surrounding neighborhood, as indicated. Proposals that exhibit thoughtful land use, creative site planning, great architectural design. Proposals that will integrate with future development of the WOW Trail. Certainly, we know the WOW Trail wants to come down Elm Street and maybe connect with the future of the state school property. The idea that we have something there that allows us to sort of integrate these trails, I think would be impressive. Actually, I think we're in a time where energy efficiency is something that we should consider, and renewable energy. Proposals that encourage community interaction. I think that would be important to me in a small community. And also, the infrastructure that needs to be done there. As we all know, we want infrastructure that's built to city specs, because we're probably going to take ownership of those streets and be responsible for rubbish removal, plowing, and things of that nature. So these are just some bulleted ideas that I would suggest to anyone taking an interest in offering us some proposal would take all of these into consideration, because I think as I look at them in a very general way, I'd be impressed with respondents to this who took all of this into consideration and kind of checked a few of these boxes. Doesn't mean if you don't check every box, you would be eliminated. In fact, I don't think we're quite there yet. So this is what is proposed. I am open to, of course, discussion among you all, feedback, criticisms, edits, things that need to be done. It's very, very early stage that I don't think we're at the point where we need to declare it as surplus property, or because we're not putting it out for an RFP. We're really in a very, very first step here. So I see Councilor Cheney. I'm very happy to hear from you.
Mr. Mayor, the last sentence in the highlighted part of page 1 This may include working with a group of residents who live in the surrounding neighborhoods. I'd ask that you change that to this shall include working with a group of residents who live in the surrounding area. I think a committee ought to be formed of area residents, 4 to 6 folks who, whoever this developer is, has to work with for design purposes. You mentioned this is one of the better neighborhoods in the city. I think we don't want to change that, and I would hope that whoever the developer is shares with the area residents what their thoughts are, and solicit area residents' concerns and questions and whatever. I don't think that should be done for this. I think it should be done anytime when we go through this process. But I support your recognizing a need for affordable housing. What I'm questioning is what's it gonna look like, and I think you've described to some degree, but I'd like the residents there to see that early on in the process.
Yeah, I think that's excellent feedback, and I appreciate it, and I'm happy to change that to shall. So, a proposal like this will naturally go through the process that we would do with any parcel of land that the city owns. We have our own council internal process here, committee work, certainly. We're not trying to circumvent that by any means. In addition, and that's why I appreciate people already coming forward. I really do want lots of people. The last thing, I think what we learned from the state school property, I may have said this to you on the phone, last thing you want is someone just dropping a development on top of you and saying, you gotta live with it. That's the wrong way to do it in my mind, that we should in fact have a separate committee, and I would suggest, as the ward, that's your ward and the council representing that ward, I would anticipate that you and perhaps Councilor Hoffman would sort of take the lead as the liaisons from the committee, from the council, with that neighborhood, right? And I would, that's what I see. That doesn't mean we're doing anything different here as far as surplus property and reviewing all of this as a council and voting on it. But I think as sort of something separate, they need to have a full-throated voice in what happens here.
Yeah, I would like to see them become confident that this project is, and I think the way to do that is to involve them early and completely.
I agree.
Thank you.
That's why we've got him here and mentioned in this RFQ, so thank you very much, I appreciate that. Councilor Susie.
My question is this, are we jumping the gun? And I mean, the state school property is pretty significant. Should this be something that we should be talking to that developer about, to put within their 200-plus acres that they're gonna have?
I think it may be a fair question, but, had we done this 18 months ago and jumped on it, we'd be 18 months ahead. Because that was a poorly rolled out RFP from the state and that property, and how we could have been doing this. I think that we could have been doing this some time ago, and we probably should have at least considered it. So I think this is our property. I think this would be conducive, I would think, with anything that they would do up there.
Okay.
I need something, I feel urgency in this, like, I need something done faster, and I don't want to sit back, because it may be 2+ years before that developer actually constructs a residence of any sort up there after they do remediation and demolition. We really can't wait, I think the pressure's on us to do something about
The
this.
pressure might be honest, but I don't want to see something in a hurry that's not, and I appreciate what Councilor Cheney said, and I hope and Councilor Hoffman do make sure that there's a significant amount of input from the residences of that neighborhood,
I
because.
think we can assure you we'll do that.
Yeah,
And my other question, Mr. Mayor, and maybe I didn't understand what you were talking about when you put in your note, what's definition of workforce housing? When you say $45,000 to $75,000 in income, okay? I'm not sure how we're gonna be able to build something. Could you give us what Dover did in the numerics? You know what they were renting them for, and what it cost, and how the property was And the financials
Do.
on that side of it?
I do. I don't know how they stacked all of their funding. I don't believe they own the land, so they had to acquire the land. I can tell you that their cost per square foot, based on my conversation with the developer, is in the neighborhood of $300 per square foot. So I think when you break out the numbers on a 550 square foot home, you break that into rentals, what the lease payment would be on that, they've managed to work it to the point of being affordable. The developer that comes into this has to have a really very good plan of how they can construct and rent out what they've built and make it a viable enterprise. I mean, that's their math problem. They need to figure it out. And I know it's been being done in this state, so I'm not an expert in it, but certainly when I heard $300 a square foot, and when I looked at the rents that were being charged there, in the neighborhood of $1,500 and less for 550 square feet, which is a full bedroom, it's working for them. It's a little different there because it's Dover, right? And I think the average median income is a little higher there. So,
Okay, because when you talk about $1,500, remember, I think we're building, developers building X amount of apartments on Providence Street. And those are probably going for less than that. Okay, so.
these are not apartments necessarily. I think apartments and an apartment building is different than something that might be more of a standalone structure.
Yep.
But again, these are only my ideas, and ultimately, they need to be fully vetted and discussed with the neighborhood and certainly with Councilors Cheney and Hoffman to.
I hope the rest of the council also, but I mean.
Yeah, of course.
Okay, well, the other thing, did the city of Dover have to put in financial assistance into this?
I don't know how they stacked their funding on this. I do believe they relied on federal funding, some federal grants to help them build a funding stack on this, but I do not have all of the details.
Okay, thank you.
Counselor Felch. Sorry.
Yes, I was fortunate enough to tour the tiny home at the high school that the Hewitt Center has built. That building is just amazing. It has heated floors. The place is just a gorgeous home. And I've been a proponent ever since I saw that for a tiny home community. I think that would be a perfect fit. I'm pretty sure the price of that tiny home is not very much. I couldn't tell you the exact figure. I can't remember off the top of my head, but it would definitely fit into that type of development.
I agree. When we've got a resource there, they know how to build them.
Yep.
One of the things that's important here too is as the property sits here right now, obviously, we're not generating any tax revenue from it. When it's transferred, however we choose to do it, if it's private ownership of the entire parcel, certainly that becomes tax revenue immediately, right? Or if there's some sort of land lease that someone may be aware of that makes sense to us as a council and to a developer, that generates funds in lieu of taxes, if you will. It's time to get the discussion started and push them along and see if anything makes sense. But this is a first step that I'm kind of excited about, quite frankly. Councilor Haynes.
Yeah, no, the only thing is, Mayor, we just can't wait. Could've, would've, should've, it's time to move on and, every day that goes by, we're 4 days behind. So the sooner the better.
I think so. I think so. Particularly we look at our police department, they're gonna add probably 8 new officers soon, we hope, right? And then some. We need places for them to live.
I guess, looking at this list here of what we're asking for, I think it's fantastic, and I want us to get as much of this as possible. Now, developers are pretty busy, right? So why would they choose to do this rather than develop something without these restrictions or considerations, right?
It's good question.
Right, so what can we do? I guess I'm concerned that we're not gonna get a lot of interest in this.
Mm-hmm.
And if we don't, what can we do to incentivize a developer to take this on and to give us as much of this want list as we can get, right? Are there things we can do to entice a developer to work with what we want?
If I might, Mr. Mayor, I would suggest that we ask them to suggest what they would need to be incentivized. Add that to the list.
Okay.
Is that,
I mean, I think we've got, I don't know if 79E would apply to this or not.
I think it would, but we'd have to dig a little bit.
Yeah, so we've
No,
got
I'm
some
not sure that's
79E.
enough.
What's that again?
That might not be enough.
No, you're right, it may not be enough.
Right.
But we don't know what is enough until we get, I want to start the discussion.
Right, because, I mean, when I read the letter or the news article, something said the value of the land was like close to $800,000.
Is that the value or is that the assessment? Yeah.
Yeah.
the
value? Probably much more than that, but, you know, I mean, right, to have some developer come in and say, as you said earlier, rent it or buy it out, and they can show a return, an ROI on that, that's gonna be a real challenge.
Maybe. So, I mean, I would encourage us as a council to be all ears, to push the discussion, to bring some relief to our citizens who are desperate for quality year-round housing that fits in their budget. I mean, I think that's, you know, we can point the finger at the economy, we can point the finger at a lot of things that are driving pricing up and making it unaffordable to live here. That's easy. Or we can try and dig in and find a solution, even if this falls flat on its face. If it falls flat on its face and we don't, then we go back to the drawing board, we try something else to solicit interest. But we have to, in my mind, just keep trying. Kirk, you have anything to add on that, by chance?
No, I don't. I think the direction that you're looking to take, you know, a committee, and not to say take it slow, but certainly to do it methodically. We have seen that fail before, not doing that. So I think that makes perfect sense, and certainly getting input from the neighborhood and the city outside of appointed or elected officials is going to be vital to the any potential success this program's going to have.
It's a good question, though, Eric, that you pose. What's in this? How do we, I don't know.
I will just make a comment on that. At any time I've talked to a developer about any potential land use or building buying or anything, they've got those answers in their pocket because they throw those cards out really early. So I think in part of that, and each type of building and land use or whatever they're choosing to purchase has some specific rules. They know them. They just throw them down like you're playing cards. They know what they're looking for, and to match what they, you know, their ROI, right? How much do they have to spend and how much are they going to get back? They know those, and what do you need to help with? So those would be early on. You'd get those answers.
So, go ahead, Counselor Susan.
I just had a what if. I mean, I'm just playing both, you know, the devil's advocate. What happens if some developer comes in and says to us, it's assessed at 800, I'll give you $3 million. I'm gonna buy the land, I'm gonna develop it the way I want to.
nope.
I say we resist that immediately.
But I understand, I'm just trying to be,
So I think our job isn't to sell to the highest bidder, even though the highest bidder may offer that appeal of a big dollar amount. Simply because I think this is more about what is our public policy as a city when it comes to housing. We can move this in a direction we want, right? I mean, I think, yeah.
I'm just trying to, because people can ask the question.
No, look, I think we've all, Kirk and I have discussed that. Why don't we just put a for sale sign on it and sell it and take the money and put it in the bank or dedicate it to something that needs money, needs finances? You can do that. Or is our obligation a little bit higher to try and push policy forward for housing?
I don't disagree with you. I just know the questions will be asked.
Sure.
I'm just trying to make sure there's.
Well, everything's got a price.
I mean,
If
The
3
city
turns
only-
to 10.
the city only has control of so much property, right?
Yeah.
We have a finite amount of of property we can directly control the future of. We definitely need to get something built there that serves a need in the community.
Yeah.
Yep.
Mhm.
It's kind of my
Definitely.
motivation.
Yep.
I just asked the questions. I gotta bring the steps up.
No, I think it's a good question. I mean, I think that's always one of our options. Why are we sitting on this land? Why don't we just sell it to the highest bidder?
Somebody from that neighborhood might turn around and say that. I'm just bringing it up. Somebody from that neighborhood might just turn around and say that. I'm just bringing the questions up. That's what I,
Yeah, no problem. So,
I think the answer to that is if we put a committee together, they can ask those questions.
sure. Sure, right? And we have that discussion, right? Well, that's it. So, I'd be looking for a motion right now to allow the city manager to put this in the proper format for citywide RFQ, RFIs. Secondly, change may on paragraph 1, 2, 3, 4, the last sentence, may to shall. Okay? And I'd also ask you, city manager, in the back of this, underneath the pictures, where it says, in considering responses to this RFQ, make sure that people, when they read that, I want to make sure it's worded such that you don't have to check every single box. But here are some things we would just like to suggest. You know, I don't want to put so many restrictions on it, people are like, you're out of your mind. I'm not
And
gonna
we've
want that
done this
stuff.
with other projects in the past where we want to see what developers or buyers have to offer. So we can, that's easily adjustable in the RFQ.
Okay. And there is, I do put something in here about being able to go to the going to the city's website and being able to see the RFQ on the website, and any questions that were submitted, we can answer them on the website.
Yeah, generally what happens on all these is or whenever we're selling or looking for any RFP, RFQ, doesn't matter, the questions come back to our purchasing specialist. She will get the answers. Generally, for this, it would come through me. We'd get the answers back out. That would be the process we would use on any of the other RFPs, RFQs that we put out.
Okay, thank you. I'd look to you and City Finance Director as well. I allude to an escrow account. Funds being placed into an escrow account before and only released upon the certificate of occupancy released to the developer. I mean, part of me, I just wanted to keep people who may not be inclined to do the right thing all the time would take a look at that and say, I don't know. I'm trying to do something there that says, I'd like you to put up some money and we'll return it to you when you meet all of our needs. It's sort of we're going to put it in writing. And then we're going to put some money in the bank. So we're going to, just to make sure that we separate the wheat from the chaff when it comes to a potential developer.
Moving along.
Well, I would just ask the question. I know we talked about forming a committee. My question is going to be, are you going to call a proposed motion on
Just
actually me doing this?
Just doing,
Okay,
I just
okay.
did. So the forming the committee, let us, if it's a 30-day window to respond to this, or a 60-day window, whatever it is, if we get the responses we hope to get, we'll start with the committee at that point with Councilors Hoffman and Councilor Cheney.
Okay.
And then working with folks from the neighborhoods to make sure that we sit down and go over this.
Okay. We can do
Okay?
that.
So that's the motion. Are we clear on the motion? You think? Would you make that motion,
Yes.
Councilor Felch? Councilor Hoffman? Okay. The second, is there any further discussion? No. Councilor Cheney, are you ready to say yes, or are you ready to say, ask a question?
I was at the yes stage.
Okay, Councilor, City Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Counselor Cheney.
Aye.
Counselor Susie.
yes.
Counselor Hoffman.
Yes.
Counselor Haynes.
Yes.
Counselor Bogart.
Yes.
Counselor Felch.
Yes.
6 votes in the affirmative, and that motion passes. You pass that down for Gabe. Would you give that to Gabe?
Thank
Okay. Agenda item number 21I. Discussion of the city manager's compensation. And conducting your annual review and speaking with the counselors. The feedback that I received from everyone was overwhelmingly positive for your work, really not just over the last 18 months, but certainly since you started with us. Some of the words that have been descriptive words that were used in talking about you were incredibly transparent, responsive, performance beyond expectations, fantastic job. But I think certainly in dealing with a number of sensitive situations, complex situations within the city, your performance has been extraordinary. And I think we as a city are very fortunate to have you as our city manager. Certainly because of that, your merit increase of 5% is all of us unanimously approved. We are also offering to you, and I hope you accept it, I know we've discussed this, but in light of the fact that you are a lifelong learner and constantly looking to better yourself, and it shows in the work that you do, that you may get from this. Next on the agenda is certainly we have taken note of the fact that you use your own vehicle all the time around the city. And though I think that's great, we certainly think that you're in line for a vehicle that you can use owned by the city, but certainly the city manager's vehicle going forward. So we'd like to work with you to identify a vehicle. Now, whether that is from another department, I don't know, or it has been suggested that the city look for the funds in order to purchase a city-owned vehicle that would be the city manager's vehicle that you would be able to use. That also includes having that vehicle as you travel to your home and back. In light of the fact that I think our expectations, and let me know if this is consistent with your understanding, you could be called upon to be here in the city in the middle of an evening and on a weekend. And I know quite often I've seen you around here on the weekends and going above and beyond. So that's what the compensation looks right now.
Certainly, thank you, and I would say the same to you guys. I've enjoyed working with each of you, and look forward to continuing for hopefully a long time.
Terrific. Good to have you.
Thank you.
Anyone else want to add anything to the city manager?
We hope for a long time.
Yes.
Me too.
Okay.
We demand.
Oh, yes.
I wasn't going to go that far.
I will. All right. So thank you.
Thank you.
Let's move on to unfinished business now. We will be entering into a non-public session after the conclusion of tonight's meeting. We will return from non-public session only to adjourn and to seal the minutes for a specific period of time. We will not be taking on any new business. Agenda item number 22A, Resolution 2024-14, approval of bonding for the library repairs. You want to touch on this at all, or are we ready to go right to votes? I think we know what we'd like to do.
I think.
Okay, this is a series of 3 votes. The first is motion to move to waive a reading of Resolution 2024 in its entirety and to read by title only. So made by Councilor Cheney, seconded by Councilor Felch. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, ask clerk to please call the roll.
Counselor Cheney?
Yes.
Counselor Susie?
Yes.
Counselor Hoffman?
Yes.
Counselor Haynes?
Yes.
Counselor Bogart?
Yes.
Counselor Felch?
Yes.
6 votes in the affirmative, that motion passes. Next, we're looking for a motion to move a second reading in the affirmative, that motion passes. Finally, on this matter, looking for a motion to approve Resolution 2024-14 relative to authorizing bonds and notes of the city in the amount of $360,000 to fund repairs to the Laconia Library as presented, and to authorize the city manager to sign all documents related to this matter. So made by Counselor Felch, seconded by Counselor Haynes. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, I'd ask the clerk to please call the roll.
Counselor Cheney?
Yes.
Counselor Susie?
Yes.
Counselor Hoffman?
Yes.
Counselor Haynes?
Yes.
Counselor Bogart?
Yes.
Counselor Felch?
Yes.
6 votes in the affirmative, that motion passes. Moving on to agenda item number 22B, ordinance 2024-149, Article 1, fire prevention.
Can I move to table?
Move the table.
Mr. Mayor, yeah,
Move
move to table,
Move
second.
to table, move to table by Counselor Susie, seconded by Counselor Cheney. That's non-debatable. Please call the roll. Madam Clerk.
Counselor Cheney?
Yes.
Counselor Susie?
Yes.
Counselor Hoffman?
Yes.
Counselor Haynes?
Yes.
Counselor Bogart?
Yes.
Counselor Felch?
Yes.
6 votes in the affirmative, that item's tabled. Moving on to agenda item number 22D. Slurring my words.
Stop drinking.
1-2C, right?
Are we on 22C?
Yeah.
22C, residential accessory units, the ADU. Pages of stuff. Ordinance 2024-235-41-A, residential accessory dwelling units. Kirk, would you like to walk us through that, or?
Yep, I can, and we also have our assistant planner in-house with us tonight. The, as you may recall, we trying to adjust a bunch of the residential use ordinances. One of them including was the accessory dwelling units. What you have proposed in the packet tonight, and I doubt you want me going through all of them, is some of it's just cleanup of language, some of it's actually making a few adjustments, so we can tighten up the
Title only, so made by Counselor Cheney, seconded by Counselor Susie. Any discussion? Seeing none, I'll ask the clerk to call the roll.
Counselor Cheney?
Yes.
Counselor Susie?
Yes.
Counselor Hoffman?
Yes.
Counselor Haynes?
Yes.
Counselor Bogart?
Yes.
Counselor Felch?
Yes.
6 votes in the affirmative, that motion passes. Next on this matter, looking for a motion to move a first reading of ordinance 2024-235-41-A, amending Chapter 235 zoning relative to the following sections as presented. Article 2, definitions and word usage. Sections 235-13, definitions. Article 7, supplementary provisions. Section 235-41A, accessory dwelling units. Attachment 2 dash Table 1, table of permitted uses. Did I lose you? Would like me to read it again?
No.
No.
Okay, we're just looking for a motion. So made by Counselor Hoffman, second by Counselor Felch. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I ask the clerk to please call the roll.
Counselor Cheney?
Yes.
Counselor Susie?
Yes.
Counselor Hoffman?
Yes.
Counselor Haynes?
Yes.
Counselor Bogart?
Mind-numbing at times.
minutes. You got it.
Counselor Felch?
Yes.
6 votes in the affirmative, that motion passes. Finally, on this matter, looking to a motion to move to schedule a public hearing on August 26, 2024, during the regular city council meeting and to gather public input prior to any action being taken. So made by Counselor Susie, seconded by Counselor Haynes. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'd ask the clerk to please call the roll.
Counselor Cheney?
Yes.
Counselor Susie?
Yes.
Counselor Hoffman?
Yes.
Counselor Haynes?
Yes.
Counselor Bogart? Counselor Felch?
Yes.
Motion passes 6-0. Moving on to agenda item number 22D. Request to designate a portion of the odd-numbered side of Dixon Street a no parking area. Kirk,
This is currently on the table. I don't know if you want to take it off before I
do we or not?
before my piece.
Are we ready to? I guess that's my point. Yes.
I'd like to make a motion to take it off the table.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Counselor by second, seconded by Counselor Susie. Please call the roll.
Counselor Cheney?
Yes.
Counselor Susie?
Yes.
Counselor Hoffman?
Yes.
Counselor Haynes?
Yes.
Counselor Bogart?
Yes.
Counselor Felch?
Yes.
6 votes in the affirmative, the matter's off the table. What's your
So this, as you recall, this was a public hearing for, we had originally looked at making all the whole street on the odd side number of Dixon Street, no parking. It was met with resistance from the public, so you tabled it. Myself, a few of my staff, Counselor Bogart, and some of the residents in the neighborhood met out on the street. We took a look at exactly how we could improve the parking situation there. Two things came out of that. Number one is we do have on that odd side of the road, a section of the street that had a no parking sign at one point, no parking, which wouldn't affect, so that way the driveways wouldn't be affected. The other half of it is something you don't have to vote on. We can just do. If you approve the no parking, we're also gonna go in and paint some actual parking spots on that street. So those two things together will prevent people from, not parking, in areas that they shouldn't, blocking driveways, and too close to the intersections, that type of, problem. So if you approve it, that's what we'll end up doing, and that's where we stand.
Okay, ready to have motions? You have a question, Counselor Haynes?
Well, we're gonna have a discussion.
Sure, we can do that too.
You wanna do it before the motion, or?
Why not? That way we'll decide whether we want to go
Okay.
forward with the motions.
As I read this, isn't this really rewarding bad behavior? I mean, we're creating parking spaces for for houses now.
What we're doing is we're identifying the locations where people should be parking for visitors. This is not designed at, full-time resident parking. This is the visitors, this is, not, like I said, non-full-time resident parking is what we're trying to do here. The parking's gonna be legal there, whether we mark them or not. This hopefully will direct to where you should be parking, and they won't park outside of those designated areas to prevent some of the problems that we're having. It's a tight street when you make the corner, off of Avery, and it gets very narrow if people aren't parking well. So this is hopefully gonna guide that better parking.
Well, I understand the density of that area. There's no question about that. Okay. What I'm concerned is, if we're setting a bad precedent, okay? Every time that there's a situation and the council makes a decision, now we can have a compromise, and no, I'm sorry, this just doesn't. With the situation that we have now in the city, as far as parking, what I'm concerned about is at some point, we're going to have to face the fact that people are gonna want on-street parking. There's more cars than people have for parking spaces. And the more we encourage people parking in the street and the whole works, we're just adding to the problem. I'm against this. You know, if there's no parking, there's no parking, period. We're not, I mean, we're spending $400 for 5 parking spaces?
If I may, we're not adding any, the no parking that was there should be ratified by your vote tonight. That really didn't change what the standard has been done. It just was never approved by the council. The adding the parking spaces isn't taking away no parking. It's just delineating where the parking should be. You're not removing, unless you wanted to go back to the original.
Yeah, thank you.
Any further discussion before we get any farther
Mr.
along?
Mayor?
Yes, Councilor Bogert.
At that meeting on the street, we had tried to look at different solutions to doing that, because the main result was to add no parking everywhere, and that's not a reasonable answer all the time. And if we give people guidance on, and this was agreed upon as part of the solution by the homeowners that are being affected by this, that let's try and provide the parking guidance. It's not adding parking spaces or anything like that. It's taking the available street parking and providing guidance with some tight paint lines. And in order to give the people who do come to those multi-families that are there, it provides them guidance to where they can park. Because if you look at it, there's nothing worse than when you come out to go to work and find your driveway's blocked. And then you have to call the police. Then you have to wait. And then when the police come up, you have to wait for them to get a tow truck. And, you know, before you know it, you're not going to work that day. So as a way of trying to compromise and enable the parking to remain on the street, this is something we wanted to try to do to see if this will help alleviate the problem by giving people a white line in front and back that you can park in. You know, and that's all it was for. And the no parking area, it was already a no parking area for 10 years. It hadn't changed. The only thing was the DPW director at that time didn't get council approval. He installed the signs so that these people could get out of their driveway. Because if a car parks in that area, which is separate from the painted areas we're talking about, then they're not able to get out. So all they're doing is taking something that was already there for the greater part of 10 years and officially doing it. That's where the no parking signs are. And the painted signs is just to help convenience for people to understand where they're driving. And that's only on that first 2-3 houses on the odd side. You're not painting everything going up and down the street. Thank you.
Move the question. Oh, I'm sorry.
I just want to add that I think the price of paint is a small price to pay to resolve the issue. I think, you know, paint on pavement has a powerful psychological impact on people. I think people are going to park in the spaces, and if it resolves the issue, it makes sense to me.
Move the question, Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to accept the proposal.
So right now, we're looking for a motion to move that the city council approve designating the area on the odd number side of Dixon Street beginning at 77 feet from the northeast corner boundary of the lot at 15 Dixon Street and ending at 15 feet from the southeast corner boundary of the lot at 15 Dixon Street, a no parking zone. So made by Councilor Bogart. Who seconded it? Seconded by Councilor Cheney. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, I'd ask the clerk to call the roll.
Counselor Cheney?
Yes?
Counselor Susie?
Yes.
Counselor Hoffman?
Yes.
Counselor Haynes?
No.
Counselor Bogart?
Yes.
Counselor Felch?
Yes.
5 votes in the affirmative, that motion passes. Right now, we'll be looking to move into non-public session under RSA 91A3.
So moved.
Well, I gotta read why, though. Consideration of the acquisition, sale, or lease of real personal property which, if discussed in public, would benefit a party or parties whose interests are adverse to those of the general community. Legal guidance as well, and so moved by Councilor Felch, seconded by Councilor Cheney. Call the roll, please.
Is the legal guidance also under D, or is it?
I don't made it up.
Oh. All right, so, Counselor Cheney and Counselor
Yep.
Felch?
How about this? It might be under consideration or negotiating of pending claims or litigation which has been threatened in writing or filed against a body or agency. Yeah, let's try that.
Counselor Cheney?
Yes?
Counselor Susie?
Yes.
Counselor Hoffman?
Yes.
Counselor Haynes?
Yes.
Counselor Bogart?
Yes.
Counselor Felch?
Yes.
6 votes in the affirmative. That motion passes. I'd ask it to come offline.
So
Go into non-public session at 9:26 PM.